Recognizing the member for Chilliwack North.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So my question is, have farmers or ranchers been provided with legal recourse if they believe a project harms their land access?
Minister.
Well, there's a consent provision if it's their land, if it's private land, right? So that's fairly straightforward.
Who wins? Who wins?
The chair will choose. Okay, go. No, you weren't standing up.
No,
Okay.
Member, go ahead.
Sorry. Thank you very much. So I'm not sure that that's entirely correct. Could you please clarify that for farmers and ranchers and their access?
Minister.
And so I'd say, remember, we answered the question as we heard the question. I mean, and the answer was that if it's you can't build a wind farm on someone else's land, essentially, right? And so it wouldn't apply in that case. Of course, it would require consent, because then you require consent to the landholder, then the landholder would be providing consent.
Member for Boundaries, Milkameen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just for clarification on that, they may not own the actual access to the land. So they may own the land, they may own the farm, but the access to it may be a Forest Service road, it may be a right-of-way, it may be a bunch of things. If their access road to their land is impacted and they're unable to access their land, do they have any legal recourse?
Minister.
Well, I don't think you'd put a wind farm on a private road that would block access. I mean, if you did have turbines, you put them on, either side of the road, maybe. So I don't think that would apply. But if there was a concern about that, that would obviously be raised in the permitting process.
Member for Delta South.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, through you to the Minister, you spoke of, I think, 9 projects that you mentioned yesterday for wind power that are up in Logan Lake, different areas. My question through you, Madam Chair, to the Minister, have each of the local bands, for instance, the Upper Nicola Band, have they all been consulted about these projects that are coming forward?
Minister.
Well, by definition, they're making the application. So what these projects were, there was a consultation in 2023 around a call for power. That consultation was extensive with First Nations, and an advisory committee that was led by First Nations was part of that process. The call for power came forward in 2024. About, I believe, 22 projects. One of the conditions of the call for power was a minimum 25% First Nations ownership. The ultimate, and you were assessed based on the price of power and all these other questions. And I believe 22 projects applied. Not all of those were wind, obviously. 9 wind projects were successful based on the criteria. It was a process overseen by a Fairness Commissioner of BC Hydro, so it was independently overseen. And the results were, of the successful projects, 9 were wind projects, and 1 was a solar project. The member's asking if the First Nations were consulted. Well, they're their projects. They own the projects. They made the applications. And so by definition, they're consultant.
Member?
Thank you. So thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to the minister. So I think we can all picture, we've all flown over wind farms on the side of mountains, solar panels down on the desert, different things like that. So when Clause 15 is saying that without having to go through the Land Commission or the ALC, a subdivision of land is going to be enacted, and non-farm use or fill use. So, Madam Chair, when we put up these huge solar panels and wind turbines, there's going to be massive fill material come in, like rock, gravel, all those things that will be covering up farmland. I mean, it has to. That's how you build things. You just don't build it on the soil. And then these massive turbines are going to come in with these massive propellers. And so my question through you, Madam Chair, is when these projects are finished or they fail, who will clean up what's there and take away the fill material that got brought in and the concrete to build these projects?
Minister?
Well, as you'd expect, the proponent would have to retain the topsoil, first of all. And also this is life cycle regulation. And that's the advantage of the BC Energy Regulator in this area for the projects in the overall, which is that, and we'll be talking about this later in the legislation, in the bill, but there is an obligation on the proponent to remediate and restore the land, right? There's an obligation in the law, as there is for oil and gas projects, and this is obviously a significant issue in the Peace and for farmers in the Peace. The member goes there regularly, he will know this, right? And so there's that obligation. But because of, we also have a regulator who is supported, and we've debated this in previous sections and in future sections, by the regulated. In other words, the oil and gas industry pays for the oil and gas regulation, the renewable energies will pay for the renewable energy regulation. Because of that, there will be, as there is in oil and gas, a fund created, and there's reference to that later in the Act, to ensure if a company would fail under those circumstances, there's a fund able to address that, as there is now with oil and gas, and the similar provisions that have been in place. I think I might have mentioned to the member for 20 years under the Energy Regulator.
Member?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for that answer. We're possibly coming close to the end, but a question through you to the minister. Could you tell the room what the environmental lifespan is of a wind tower project with the massive propellers, the massive oil lubricant inside? What's the lifespan?
Minister?
Well, this isn't the life. Obviously, when you're have an energy process like that, you'll have regular repair of the project. The member would know that. These are pretty serious wind companies, and they're wind projects around the world, so there'd be that. I don't know if the members are saying what the lifespan is of the project. What I can tell them specifically is the electricity purchase agreements that are with the successful proponents in this round are for 30 years.
Member for Columbia River Revelstoke?
I appreciate it, Madam Chair, very much. Thank you. Just a clarification with something the minister mentioned, the Lower Nicola being a partner in one of these projects, but as we know, there are several nations in that region. Have they also all provided consent to this project moving forward?
Minister?
Of course, those nations would be consulted through the permitting process, as one would expect. The proponents of the projects are individual First Nations, as you'd expect, unless it's possible, and one could imagine circumstances where multiple First Nations come together on a particular project. That could happen. That hasn't happened in these 10 cases. The proponents are single First Nations who are partnered and own 51% of these projects.
Member for Chilliwack North.
Thank you. So will the ALR land used for renewable projects be taxed at a higher industrial rate or protected under agricultural assessment schemes?
Minister.
Thank you. The farm tax credit, as the member knows, and I fear I'm entering into an area where other members know more than me, but the farm tax credit, to get that, you have to be farming. And so if you're not farming that particular part of the property, you wouldn't get the farm tax credit.
Member.
Thank you. So in Chilliwack, a lot of the farmers, my constituents, are becoming increasingly alarmed at the rate of ALR land coming out and being built on. What assurances do they have that more land will not be removed and they'll see turbines going up on ALR, rich, fertile ALR land?
Minister.
Well, Honourable Speaker, Honourable Chair, it's, first of all, we've gone through a round. We have wind and solar projects, the equivalent of Site C. They're in 10 locations around the province, big province. With respect to land in the members' riding or any other riding, this is not the removal of land for the ALR. This section shifts responsibility when it comes to the non-farm use of renewable energy projects to the BC Energy Regulator. So the Act still applies. The Energy Regulator can't, on this basis, remove land from the ALR. Right? So it's non-farm use. And in addition to that, the BC Energy Regulator has been addressing these issues in oil and gas for 20 years. They have teams of agrologists and others on staff, and they do a really good job. The delegation agreement that put this in place was put in place in 2004, not under this government, but under previous government. But it sort of followed on the idea of one window regulation, where you don't have multiple regulators for the same project. You have one regulator applying all of the laws. And the BC Energy Regulator, in its regular reports, does a really excellent job of this. I just refer the member to the thousands of inspections. For the ALR portion of the responsibility of the BC Energy Regulator, within its oil and gas sphere, it's now going to be expanded to renewable energy. So what I'm arguing to the member is, if you believe in one window regulation, the idea of energy projects moving as a class to the BC Energy Regulator, as her party does in other areas, won't get into that again, but then this is a reasonable thing to do. And you have to acknowledge, and we have acknowledged, the excellent work by the BC Energy Regulator in this area.
Recognizing the member.
Thank you. I guess my concern with this response is the ALR process has gone very quickly in a lot of these circumstances, quicker than normal circumstances when it goes through the entire process for ALR with the farmers and the lands. But my concern is the statement here that in section 2 that says with or without limits or conditions. So that's the piece that has me curious, or concerned, I should say. Thank you.
Minister?
Excuse me, sorry. Thank you, Honorable Chair. What that means, Honorable Chair, is that the regulator can permit with or without conditions. Right? So it might be possible you envision a permitting without conditions, but in a process there may be conditions on that regulation. That's what that means. It doesn't mean what the member was suggesting.